During the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively low in the heavens, within view of the melancholy house of Usher, I know not how it was, but with the first glimpse of the building, a sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. I noticed a barely perceptible fissure, which, extending from the roof of the building in front, made its way down the wall in a zigzag direction, until the crack became lost in the sullen waters of the Tarn. At last I rode to the house, where a servant took my horse. I entered the Gothic archway of the hall, where a valet of stealthy step conducted me in silence through many dark and intricate passages to the studio of his master. I gazed upon him with a feeling half of pity, half of awe. Surely man had never before so terribly altered, in so brief a period, as had Roderick Usher. The ghastly pallor of his skin and the miraculous luster of the eye, above all things, startled and even awed me. As I looked upon him in the gloom, my fancy saw in him, as in the great stone house, a crack, a fissure, that at any time might bring about the complete collapse of the last of the House of Usher. At the request of Usher, I personally aided him in the arrangements for the temporary entombment. The body having been encoffined, we two alone bore it to its rest. The vault in which we placed it was small, damp, and utterly without means of admission for light, lying at great depth immediately beneath that portion of the building in which was my own sleeping apartment. The door, of massive iron, caused an unusually sharp, grating sound as it moved upon its hinges. There is upon her face a faint blush of life.
It is a mockery. The disease which has entombed the Lady Madeline left this mocking color and this lingering smile upon her lips. It was even so, and yet she lived and merely fell into a trance.
And having secured the door of iron, made our way with toil into the scarcely less gloomy apartments of the upper portion of the house. After some days of bitter grief, a change came over the features of the last of the Ushers. He roamed from chamber to chamber with hurried, unequal, and meaningless steps. I had arrived at that portion of the story where Ethelred, the hero of the tale, sought forcible entrance into the dwelling of the hermit. For a moment I paused, for it appeared to me that from some very remote portion of the mansion there came indistinctly to my ears the echo of the very cracking and ripping sound which the story described. It was beyond doubt noises of the still increasing storm. I continued the story. Here again I paused abruptly, and now with a feeling of wild amazement, for there could be no doubt whatever that in this instance I did actually hear a low and distant screaming or grating sound, exact counterpart of what my fancy had already conjured up for the dragon's unnatural shriek in the story. Usher, during these strange events, had gradually brought round his chair so as to sit with his face to the door of the chamber. He rocked from side to side with a gentle yet constant and uniform sway, his eyes wide and rigid. Again I read from the ancient book. Then, as if a shield of brass had indeed at that moment fallen heavily upon a floor of silver, I became aware of a distinct, hollow, metallic, and clamorous, yet apparently muffled reverberation. The measured rocking movement of Usher was undisturbed. His eyes were bent fixedly before him. In the superhuman energy of his utterance, there had been found the potency of a spell. The huge antique panels to which Usher pointed threw slowly back for an instant their ponderous and ebony jaws. It was the work of the rushing gust. But then there did stand the lofty and enshrouded figure of the Lady Madeline of Usher. There was blood upon her white robes. For a moment she remained trembling and reeling to and fro upon the threshold, then with a low, moaning cry, fell heavily inward upon her breast. From that chamber and from that mansion I fled, aghast. The storm was still abroad in all its wrath, when suddenly there shot along the path a wild light. I turned and gazed at the ancient and vast building. The crack, which I had noticed upon arrival, rapidly widened. My brain reeled as I saw the mighty walls rushing asunder. There was a long, tumultuous shouting sound, like the voice of 1,000 waters. And the deep and dank tarn at my feet closed sullenly and silently over the fragments of the house of Usher.